Just before you fall asleep, something remarkable happens. Your rational mind releases its grip. The chatter quiets. The boundary between what is and what could be begins to blur. You're suspended between waking and sleeping, neither fully conscious nor unconscious. Neville Goddard called this the state akin to sleep. He claimed it was the most powerful state for human transformation. Most people pass through this threshold twice daily without awareness or intention. They drift from waking into sleep, wasting the most potent moments available to them. But Goddard discovered something that changed everything he understood about consciousness and creation. In 1933, he was living in New York, broke and desperate to visit his family in Barbados. He had no money for the ticket, no visible means of getting there. So he tried something radical. Every night, as he drifted towards sleep, he imagined himself on a ship heading to Barbados. He felt the motion of the waves beneath him. He saw the coastline approaching. He experienced the scene as if it were happening. Within weeks, his brother offered to pay for the entire trip. The very thing he'd been imagining became fact. This wasn't the first time it had worked for him, and it wouldn't be the last. Goddard spent the rest of his life teaching this technique to anyone who would listen. Neville Goddard was a practitioner, not a theorist. Everything he taught came from direct experience and results that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. He discovered early that the mind has different states, different levels of receptivity. Some states are far more powerful than others when it comes to impressing the subconscious. The fully waking state is analytical, critical, defended. Your conscious mind acts as a gatekeeper, questioning everything. When you imagine something while wide awake, your mind immediately compares it to what you currently see, and often rejects the imagined as unreal. This critical faculty serves you well in daily life, but it becomes a barrier when you're trying to create change. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to force or argument. It responds to feeling, to impression, to ideas accepted as true without resistance. Goddard tested everything. He tried meditation, he tried visualization during waking hours. He tried affirmations repeated until his voice went hoarse. Some techniques worked occasionally, but nothing compared to what happened when he imagined just before sleep. In that drowsy state, something shifted. The resistance vanished. The doubt quieted. What he imagined felt real in a way it never did when he was fully awake. And more importantly, it manifested. He called it the state akin to sleep. Not sleep itself, where you lose consciousness completely. Not the fully awake state, where the critical mind interferes. The threshold between them. The golden moment when imagination can slip past the gatekeeper and plant itself in fertile ground. As you begin to fall asleep, your brainwave activity shifts. You move from beta waves, the fast frequency of alert consciousness, down into alpha and then theta. Slower, deeper, more receptive. In theta, your critical faculty relaxes. Your sense of limitation softens. The hard line between real and imagined dissolves. This is the state children naturally occupy. It's why they believe so easily. Why they can imagine themselves as anything without the slightest doubt. Their critical mind hasn't fully formed. They live in theta much of the time. As adults, we've trained ourselves out of this state during waking hours. We've built defenses, skepticism, realism. We've identified so completely with what we can see and touch that we've forgotten how to make the imagined feel real. But every night, as we drift toward sleep, the door opens again. Goddard understood that in this state, imagination and reality feel identical to the subconscious mind. If you imagine something vividly while in the state akin to sleep, your deeper mind accepts it as fact. It doesn't argue about possibility. It simply receives the impression and begins organizing your reality around it. This isn't visualization in the ordinary sense. This is impressing the subconscious at the moment it's most receptive. when the guard is down, when belief is effortless. Let me give you concrete examples because this is where most people get confused. They understand the concept but don't know what to actually imagine. Goddard taught his students to construct one simple scene, not elaborate fantasies, not movies in their mind. One short loop that implies the wish fulfilled. A woman wanted to be married. She didn't imagine the proposal. She didn't imagine the wedding. She imagined lying in bed at night, reaching over, and feeling a wedding ring on her finger. That simple. She felt the metal. She heard her husband breathing beside her. One scene looped repeatedly every night as she drifted to sleep. 6 months later, she was married. A man wanted financial freedom. He didn't imagine stacks of money. He didn't imagine winning the lottery. He imagined sitting at his desk, looking at his bank statement, and feeling completely at peace. No anxiety or worry, just the calm feeling of abundance. He saw the numbers. He felt the relief in his body. 3 months later, an unexpected business opportunity appeared. Within a year, he had more than he'd imagined. These scenes work because they're specific enough to feel real, but simple enough to repeat without effort. You're not writing a screenplay, but instead, creating one vivid moment that your subconscious can accept as true. The scene you choose depends on your desire, but it must always imply the end result, not the process, the end. If you want a new home, don't imagine house hunting. Imagine turning the key in your front door. Imagine walking through rooms you own. Feel the satisfaction of being home. If you want a relationship, don't imagine the first date. Imagine the comfort of being together, the easy conversation, the feeling of connection already established. If you want creative success, don't imagine trying to create. Imagine receiving congratulations. Imagine people responding to something you've already made. Always from the end. Always as if it's done. You wait until you're ready for sleep. In bed, lights off, body comfortable, naturally drowsy. This timing is critical. You don't try to enter this state at noon when you're alert. You use the body's natural rhythm. You let drowsiness carry you to the threshold. As you lie there, you allow complete relaxation. You release the day. You let tension drain from your muscles. You feel yourself sinking into the mattress, getting heavier. Then, right before you would normally let go and fall asleep, you catch yourself. You remain aware. You hold a gentle thread of consciousness while your body prepares to sleep. This takes practice. Most people either stay too alert or relax too much and fall asleep immediately. You're looking for the balance, the edge. You'll know you're in the state when you feel deep, peaceful drowsiness. Your body feels heavy and relaxed. Your thoughts slow. There's stillness. Yet you're still conscious. You can still direct your attention. Goddard described it as feeling like you're floating, like your body's boundaries have softened. You're present but distant, aware but drifting. This is the state of being where the work happens. If this is resonating with you, please subscribe to continue on this journey. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Once you're in the state akin to sleep, you bring to mind a scene. One simple scene that implies your wish is fulfilled. Not a scene of you getting what you want, a scene that assumes you already have it. This distinction is everything. Goddard was adamant about this. You don't imagine the process. You don't imagine working towards something or asking for something. You imagine from the end. You construct a moment that would only occur if your desire were already fact. If you want financial freedom, you don't imagine money arriving. You imagine a scene that assumes freedom is already yours. Sitting in a home you own, completely at peace. Making a large donation without hesitation. Declining a job offer because you don't need it. Pick one scene. Make it specific. Make it simple. Then, in the state akin to sleep, you replay that scene. You inhabit it. You see what you would see. You hear what you would hear. You feel what you would feel if this were happening now. You don't force or strain it. You gently loop the scene with feeling and with acceptance, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Here's what Goddard understood that most people miss. The feeling is what seals the impression, not the visual clarity or how perfectly you can picture it. You must focus on the feeling. You can have a blurry, vague image and still manifest if the feeling is there. But you can have crystal clear visualization and manifest nothing if you don't feel it as real. The feeling he talked about was a calm, natural feeling of something being so, rather than a feeling of desperation. It should be the feeling of relief, the feeling of completion, a profound satisfaction of having what you sought. Think about something you already have that you once wanted. Maybe it's a skill you developed. Maybe it's a relationship that's now established. Maybe it's something you own. Remember when you first wanted it? There was intensity, desire, longing. Now that you have it, there's something else. Calm, naturalness, the simple fact of its presence. That's the feeling you're cultivating in the state akin to sleep, not the wanting, the having. You do this every night. Same scene, same feeling. Goddard taught that persistence is everything. One night won't do it. You need to saturate your subconscious with this impression. You need to make it so familiar, so deeply planted, that it becomes the dominant pattern. Most people fail because they try it once or twice, see no immediate change, and quit. They don't understand they're working with deep mental soil. Seeds take time to sprout. But if you persist, if you fall asleep every night in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, something shifts. Your behavior changes. Your decisions change. Opportunities appear that you wouldn't have noticed before. Doors open. Circumstances rearrange themselves. Goddard claimed this happened through what he called the law of identical harvest. You reap what you sow. If you plant the seed of your fulfilled desire in the subconscious grows it into objective reality. He had thousands of letters from students who applied this technique and watched their lives transform. New jobs, healed relationships, money from unexpected sources, physical healing. Not because of magic, because they changed the pattern in the subconscious mind, and the subconscious always expresses itself in the world. Let me be honest about something Goddard rarely said directly, but understood completely. Most people who try this technique fail. Not because the technique doesn't work, because they can't get out of their own way. The first barrier is belief. Not belief that the technique works in general. Most people can accept that abstractly. The barrier is believing it will work for them, for this specific desire, given their specific circumstances. They imagine the scene, and immediately a voice says, "But you don't have the money. But you're too old. But you don't have the connections. But it's never worked before." This voice isn't the truth. It's just conditioning. Years of accepting limitation as fact. But it's loud enough to corrupt the impression you're trying to plant. The second barrier is attachment to how it happens. People imagine the end, but they're secretly attached to a specific path. They want the relationship, but only if it comes through a certain person. They want the money, but only if it comes from their current job. Goddard would say that's not faith. That's trying to do the subconscious's job. Your job is to define the end. The subconscious's job is to arrange the path. When you insist on controlling how it unfolds, you limit what's possible. The third barrier is the hardest. It's living from the old state while trying to impress the new one. You imagine abundance before sleep, then wake up and spend all day worrying about bills. You imagine the fulfilled relationship before sleep, then wake up and complain about being alone. You imagine success before sleep, then wake up and tell everyone how stuck you are. Goddard called this divided attention. You can't serve two masters. You can't plant seeds of wealth at night and seeds of poverty all day and expect the first to dominate. The technique works when your imaginal act before sleep is so vivid, so felt, that it begins to color your waking hours. Not that you pretend your current circumstances don't exist, but that you stop giving them power. You stop identifying with them as permanent. The first mistake is trying too hard, straining, forcing. This doesn't work in the state akin to sleep. This state requires gentleness. If you find yourself tense, you're doing it wrong. Relax. Soften. Let the scene unfold naturally. The second mistake is doubt. People imagine the scene, and immediately their conscious mind jumps in with objections. That's not possible. I don't see how that could happen. I've tried before and it didn't work. Goddard would say doubt is the only thing that can stop this from working. Not external circumstances, not bad luck. Doubt. You have to learn to imagine without arguing with yourself. Just for those few minutes before sleep, allow yourself to feel it as real. You don't need to figure out how it will happen. You just need to feel it as done. The third mistake is giving up too soon. Goddard said the time between planting the seed and seeing the harvest depends on the depth of your conviction and the naturalness of your feeling. Some impressions manifest quickly. Others take weeks or months. You don't get to choose the timing. You just keep planting the seed, night after night, until it blooms. The reason you do this just before sleep is not arbitrary. Sleep is when the subconscious does its deepest work. When you sleep, your conscious mind steps aside completely. The subconscious takes over, processing the day, organizing memory, running the body's systems. If the last thing you impressed on your subconscious before sleep was the feeling of your wish fulfilled, that impression gets the entire night to root itself deeply. 8 hours of your subconscious working on that pattern, undisturbed by conscious interference. This is why Goddard said never fall asleep feeling negative. Never fall asleep in worry, in fear, in resentment. Whatever state you fall asleep in, you give your subconscious permission to multiply that state all night long. If you fall asleep anxious about money, you spend 8 hours impressing poverty on your subconscious. If you fall asleep in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you spend 8 hours impressing success. This is why Goddard called it the most important time of your day. Before bed tonight, decide on your scene. Make it short. Make it clear. Something that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Don't complicate it. It is a profound but very simple moment. Then, as you lie in bed and feel yourself getting drowsy, bring that scene to mind. See and feel it. Then let it loop gently as you drift. If you fall asleep in the middle of it, perfect. That's exactly what you want. You want to fall asleep saturated in that feeling. Do this every night for a week. Just 1 week. See what happens. Goddard promised that if you do this faithfully, if you persist without wavering, you will see results. Maybe not in the way you expect, maybe not on your timeline, but you will see your inner world beginning to harden into facts. You do not need years of training nor perfect technique. Rather, you just need to be willing to do one thing differently than you've been doing it. Instead of falling asleep in your current state, you should fall asleep in your desired state, night after night, until the gap between them closes. It takes discipline, faith, and persistence, but it doesn't require anything you don't already have. The state akin to sleep presents itself daily, whether you use it or not. The capacity to imagine is built into you, and the power to feel is already yours. You just have to point these faculties toward what you want instead of what you don't want. toward the end instead of the obstacles, toward the wish fulfilled instead of the wish denied. Goddard proved this works through many results: his own life, his students' lives. The state akin to sleep is the way imagination becomes fact. Tonight, when you lie down to sleep, you have a choice. You can fall asleep the way you always have, letting your mind wander wherever it wants, carrying forward the patterns of the past. Or you can fall asleep deliberately. You can use those precious moments to plant the seeds of what you want to experience. The state akin to sleep is not mystical, but rather a very practical method. It's like a doorway between the mind and the world. Use your imagination every night. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. If you're beginning this practice tonight, leave a comment below. Let everyone here know what you're imagining, what wish you're planting in the fertile ground of sleep. The act of declaring it makes it more real, and the community of those walking this path alongside you strengthens and inspires the work. Watch what grows. If this resonated with you, I invite you to listen to the next one. Thank you again.